Um, we don't put our hands on our daughter, unless it's love. We don't we I try to go down to her level, like physically, just so I'm talking to her. So, I'm not standing over her. I'm 6 foot. So, when we're talking, I ask questions, and, I ask about her day. And, you know, when I say the things I swear I would never do, I don't know if I had those thoughts. And to be perfectly honest, I don't truly believe I had those thoughts when I was younger. I don't see myself. First and foremost, I never saw myself as being a dad. In general, and to kind of pick up on some habits, and I'm like, oh man, I remember my dad, did that with me, and I get it now. You know what I'm saying? Like some of the things you kind of witness when you're younger, you pick up on as an adult, and you realize some of that stuff is super dated, and we don't do that anymore. But I think some foundational things are tried and true, and they will always work. So I still got a long ways to go because she is only 18 months. But we'll see how this roller coaster goes, as time goes on. And I think what my parents got right with me is that I'm just kind of a critical thinker, and I tend to kind of go back and forth on things, especially when I have an idea for something, and I hope that my daughter, kind of brings that same spirit to how she approaches things, and I think she does that. When she's now, her responsibilities are nowhere close to what my wife and I have to do to live and exist. But usually it just consists of moving this item over there, carrying this bag with that bag, or figuring out how to put on shoes, which we are actively working on, because she should know how to put on her shoes. And she's trying to put on my shoes too, which is that ain't gonna happen for a while. But my parents were right. My dad said, and I think I mentioned this episode one. My dad said, you will never sleep the same for the rest of your life, and that is factual. That is factual. I do not sleep the same. It is, I usually check on her before I go to bed. Um, and now we're starting getting the blankets and stuff like that. So, I'm super cautious when it comes to that kinds of stuff. But I definitely don't sleep as much as I used to, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Because I like spending time with my family. This was, I'll talk a little bit about my birthday here in a little bit, but I'm always wanting to do that stuff. And it's been a bit of an adjustment coming up here, and just kind of figuring out how to live and do this and do that, because you used to do so much with your significant other, before you had a kid. And she was busy before. My wife, I'm talking about my wife, she was busy before, but now she's twice as busy, and we have a kid. So those things, I kind of cherish, really want to hold on to, just because I don't want us to grow apart. I don't want the relationship between my wife and I to dissipate. And I want my relationship with my daughter to be positive and great, and I want us to do things. And I really think about time getting away. And I don't want time to get away. And in retrospect, it's easy to talk about what shoulda, coulda, woulda been. But we have to do those things, and I have to do those things too. I have to be proactive on a lot of those things, just because it's easy to let that stuff get away from you. And it's easy to just forget. It's easy to fall in routine and just exist. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to just exist. I want to be proactive in my marriage and with my daughter as well. So